Get off my property. That shriek. It wasn't just a demand, it was like a siren going off in the middle of our peaceful hunting morning, the kind of sound that slices through a man's soul and leaves his nerves jangling. My granddad's jaw went hard as granite right then, watching that blue Jeep roar down our private trail like it owned the place. And out steps this woman, hair sprayed so stiff it might just deflect bullets, waving a plastic badge and barking orders like we'd wandered into her kingdom by mistake. I'd seen a lot on this old patch of land, but nothing that made my blood burn quite like that moment, watching her stomp around and demand we destroy what 4 generations had built with calloused hands and stubborn pride. What happened next? Well, let's just say Becky Lamont picked the wrong quiet old man to try and bulldoze. Let me back up because the real screaming sure wasn't coming from us. Becky Lamont, vice president of the Sunset Valley HOA 2 ridges over, had just about wrecked her Jeep, slamming to a stop in our camp, standing there shrieking at my 75-year-old granddad like he was some punk kid caught egging houses. The balls on this woman, honestly. We'd been having one of those mornings that makes you believe in a good world, just me and Granddad Walter setting up our deer-blind coffee, steaming from his old thermos, sun making patterns through the oak leaves, talking about how the deer had been moving that year. Then here comes a dust tornado with bad hair and worse intentions. She blasted right past every no trespassing sign, every bright orange private property warning, and the heavy chain we keep across the entrance like they were suggestions for lesser mortals. By the time she climbed out power suit clipboard, that badge bouncing on her chest, she looked ready to conquer territory. "You people need to remove these illegal structures immediately," she hollered, swinging that clipboard toward our deer blind like it was radioactive waste. "This is a direct violation of community aesthetic standards. I'm here conducting an official inspection." The way she said official, I almost laughed out loud, except for the fact she was dead serious, standing on our land, acting like the law. Granddad just sat there cool as a mountain stream, sipping coffee like he'd seen it all, which honestly he probably had. "Ma'am," he said, that voice of his slow as honey but hard as a fence post. "This here is private hunting land. Been in the family since 1911. That oak with the markers, that's our line. Always has been." He tipped his cup toward the massive tree trunk carved with great-granddad's initials, iron survey tag still there from 100 years back. Becky naturally started snapping photos of everything, the blind, the pickup, even my boots, building a case like she was filming an episode of Law and Order HOA. "I don't see any official HOA approval for these structures," she sniffed, flipping through her clipboard. "According to our extended buffer zone regulations, this area falls under Sunset Valley Homeowners Association jurisdiction. All permanent structures require approval." She tried to claim authority over land that was ours before her ancestors had even built a house out here. That's when I saw at Granddad's shoulder set that quiet tension you see in a man right before things get serious. I'd seen that look twice before, once when a drunk waved a gun at our camp, once when a developer came nosing around about timber rights. Both times things didn't go well for the outsider. He watched her jeep the path in and out, every tight spot between the trees. I saw his eyes drift toward the old shed, the one with his stash of railroad spikes from the days when the valley actually had a railroad. Suddenly, I realized this HOA invasion was about to cost Miss Becky way more than a set of business cards. Granddad stood up slow and certain. "Ma'am, you came onto my property uninvited and now you're making demands. I suggest you think carefully about how you're going to drive back out." His words were polite, but I felt a chill. There's a tone men use when they're done being patient. Becky didn't get the hint, just kept on taking photos, muttering about buffer zones and safety hazards until Granddad fetched a crate from the shed, 6 railroad spikes, thick and ugly, sharp as sin. He set them down, picking one up like a craftsman picking a chisel. Some people learn from words he said almost to himself. Some people gotta learn from the road itself. 3 days later, she was back, this time with reinforcements. Her jeep led a convoy of 3 more suburban warriors armed with clipboards, measuring tapes, righteous indignation, and an almost religious faith in their right to dictate how the world should look. The horn blast started before they even pulled in, like they were calling the deer to worship. Becky, in her full Karen battle armor pantsuit flats lanyard, thick as a janitor, shouted attention. This is your 72-hour notice to remove all unpermitted structures from this buffer zone. Her friends fanned out, one measuring the deer blind, one snapping photos of my truck, the other collecting soil samples like the dirt itself was illegal. Granddad, though, he'd been busy. That morning I'd watched him plant a single railroad spike at a sharp bend in the trail, not blocking it, just teaching. "Ma'am," he said as the show got rolling, "I told you this is private property. Here's the deed, the county map. The tax records all going back to 1911. Would you like to see them, or do you want to keep making demands you got no right to make?" Becky didn't miss a beat. "I don't need to see anything," she said, turning her back. "The HOA has jurisdiction here, and that's final." She ordered her crew to document everything, oblivious to the fact she was about to get a very expensive education. They stomped, measured, clicked all with the gravity of mall cops raiding a lemonade stand. Walter just sipped coffee, eyes occasionally drifting to the curve where he'd left his road improvement. When Becky finally finished her inspection and climbed into her Jeep, the drama really began. They peeled out Becky, leading, until a hard snap echoed through the trees. Her tire hissed empty. Her Jeep lurched, coffee painting the windshield. The others scattered like pigeons. One of them clipped Becky's bumper, adding insult to injury. "Sabotage!" Becky screamed, voice breaking, pointing at us like we'd fired a rocket at her. Walter emerged from the woods, thermos in hand, looking innocent as a lamb. "Problem with your ride, ma'am. These old logging roads, a lot of sharp hazards left over from the railroad days." He nodded at the spike now, part of Becky's very flat tire. The HOA crew stared, realizing there was no cell service, no authority, no way out but to ask for help. "I've got a jack and a spare," Walter offered, "if you'd care to admit you got no authority here." The look on Becky's face, pure gold. A week later, Becky returned, this time with 3 more board members in tow, everyone in HOA enforcement polos, cargo pockets, fake badges, and walkie-talkies from the dollar store. One dude even wore a fishing vest for tactical effect. Their convoy rolled up like the Secret Service. "Sir, you're in violation of multiple community standards," said the vest guy, clipboard trembling. "We're here to conduct an enforcement inspection." Walter barely looked up. "Officers," he said deadpan, "I'd be happy to cooperate with any real law enforcement. Can I see your badges and jurisdiction paperwork?" Suddenly, the tough guys looked like kids caught playing cop in the neighbor's backyard. Just then, the real deal showed up. Deputy Carl, a local kid who grew up in these woods, saw the enforcement team and nearly cracked up. "Afternoon, Walter. What's going on?" Becky launched into her HOA speech, but Carl cut her off. "Ma'am, do you have actual law enforcement credentials? Because those badges look like they came from a party store." The silence was electric. Brad stared at his plastic badge. Steve hid his walkie-talkie. Becky turned several new shades of red. Carl shook his head. "Ma'am, HOA rules don't apply to private property outside your development, and they sure don't include dressing up like cops." Neighbors started showing up with lawn chairs and coolers, settling in for the show. Kids giggled, parents filmed. "Officers," Walter said to the cosplay crew, "you want some coffee while you patrol." The HOA team wilted under the laughter, but Becky still tried to save face. "This isn't over. Next time I'm bringing real enforcement." Walter just smiled and tapped the crate of railroad spikes. Word spread. By the next HOA meeting, half the county showed up for the fireworks. Walter walked in with a folder of documents thicker than a phone book. Becky tried to keep us out, but Jim Patterson, retired lawyer, spoke up. "County code says meetings that impact non-member property must be open to affected parties." Becky turned purple, but Walter kept calm. "Ma'am, you've been trespassing, making false claims, and training an enforcement team to harass private landowners. Here's the map. Here's a letter from the county attorney. Your authority ends miles from our fence line." He held up the documents. Silence. Even some of Becky's friends started to look nervous. Walter wasn't done. "According to county code, impersonating law enforcement is a crime," he said, eyeing Becky's badge. Laughter swept the room. Becky shouted, "I am the HOA. I decide what's legal." Jim asked for a hearing. As the meeting broke up, Becky cornered Walter. "You think you've won?" "I'll show you real power." He smiled, gentle as ever. "Ma'am, you've already shown me what fake power looks like. The road's still there if you want another lesson." Becky's next move, Operation Reclaim Authority. 5 vehicles, SUVs, pickups, a minivan full of the book club came down our trail like they were storming Normandy. Granddad had spent the week making road safety improvements, tightening the S-curves, laying some reminders where speed meets bad judgment. The convoy hit the narrow turn. Becky's Jeep slid into the mud, buried to the hubs. The rest stacked up in a clumsy pile-up SUVs, bottomed-out minivans, stuck tires, hissing radios, squawking. Within minutes, 20 suburban warriors were monument to fake authority. The game warden rolled up clipboard ready. "Trespass on posted land is not a gray area." Walter just grinned, offering help and a lesson in respect. At the emergency HOA meeting, Becky was out for blood photos, speeches about terrorism, the works. But Walter brought the truth maps, regulations, letters from the county. Jim Patterson stood up. "Becky, you've exposed us to legal liability. Any damages aren't covered by insurance. Impersonating police is a crime." The board voted 8-1 Becky out. Unanimous apology to Walter. Becky cornered him one last time. "You have no idea what real power looks like." "Walter, if you want to show me the road's still there." Becky's last stand. Hired a private security firm, 10 vehicles, militia, and camo radio chatter bullhorns. Walter had spent the week preparing comprehensive road safety lessons, every exit route. The Liberation Convoy hit the trail and one by one met the railroad spikes. 13 flats, 6 stuck vehicles, grown men in camo swearing at radios. The crowd gathered again, coolers and cameras, as Deputy Carl posted warnings about historic railroad debris. Becky, purple with rage, shouted war crimes as tow trucks rolled in. She left the valley humiliated and defeated. Justice wasn't just legal. Walter became a local legend. The hardware store started selling Walter special spikes, and law enforcement used the story as a training case. The HOA board got cautious. Our peace returned, just deer sign, coffee steam, and the old oak tree standing watch. On the exit, Walter posted a plaque. "Some lessons can only be learned the hard way." That's the story I'll tell my kids, how sometimes you have to let the road teach respect, and how real authority isn't something you can demand with a badge or a suit. So what do you think? Is justice just about the law, or is it about letting the consequences teach the lesson? Drop your thoughts below. Share your own stories about standing up to fake authority. And if you've ever seen karma work overtime in your neighborhood. And hey, respect costs nothing, but forgetting that can get real expensive real quick.